All right, so today we're going to talk for a few minutes about setting up birds for nesting. Not necessarily nesting boxes, but I mean we're going to talk about nesting boxes, but about where to put them in the aviaries and what kind of nesting boxes to put in specific spots, and some of the different techniques we use. In this pen here, you can see there's some Nene geese with a couple of goslings. We didn't do that great on them this year, but regardless. We raised a couple of them. And you'll notice this aviary here doesn't have any vegetation in it yet. We are in North Carolina. As soon as these geese are moved out of here, which will be rather shortly, it'll start filling up with a lot of vegetation in here. And at that point, we'll put a bird that lays typically later in the year. And I'll talk about that for a minute. We typically hatch out year-round down in North Carolina. Different species, of course, lay at different times of the year. This time of year, obviously, is the most productive part of the year. Most of the birds will start laying anywhere between April and beginning of June or July. So what we do is the birds that typically lay early. For example, an African black duck will typically lay in January, February, maybe early March. So we'll set them up in an aviary. And then they'll finish up, and then in like March, we'll switch them out for something different. For example, in March we might put a pair of red-crested poachards in the pen that the African black ducks are in, and we'll pull the African black ducks and put them in a holding pen. And then after the red-crested poachards are done, we'll pull them. They typically finish up somewhere around this time. In fact, we just pulled a trio yesterday. We pull them, we put them in the holding pen, and then from there we'll take another pair of birds and move them over into the pen. And in this case, I put some comb ducks in there because they'll be laying sometime, probably in June or so. So that's how. And then come fall time, we'll pull them out and we'll replace them with Nene geese or Australian shell ducks and so on. So we can use the same pen for 4 different species throughout the year. And it maximizes production in all the species because you don't have any inter or intra-specific competition if we put them in smaller pens. So anyhow, in the fall time, like I said, we typically set up something like Nene, and we'll use barrels. They don't look really pretty. You can use a box, wooden box. We like the barrels because we get them for nothing. They're easy. You just cut a hole in the front, and then we typically like to bury them in the ground case and make sure that they're very good in case there's some rain. It gets in there, it won't push them around, roll them around to the pen. These barrels get really hot in the summertime, so I wouldn't recommend using them in the summer, with one exception, and we'll get to that in a few minutes. So when these birds get around to hatching, when they're about ready to hatch, what we do is inside these barrels, and I don't know if we can get a picture of it with the video of it, a photo of it in here. There's usually a high lip on the inside of these barrels. So what we'll typically do is we'll take some bricks or something and we'll stack them up. That way the goslings or ducklings in some cases can easily exit the barrel. So we'll take a walk up to some other aviaries. Now, everybody's familiar with this. This is called a raised box. There's actually in the wild, wood ducks and mandarins and black-bellied tree ducks and stuff will nest in cavity nests. And this is our substitute for the cavity nest. Back in the early part of the 1900s, thousands of these things were erected for wood duck recovery programs. And I mean, I've gone through this plenty of times. It's just a really basic dimension. We use dimensional lumber for this, and it's 2 foot high in 1 foot square box. We vary the size of the holes. I'll come over and get a picture in here. We vary the size of the holes in the front of the boxes for different sized birds. See, this is built a little bit bigger than a mandarin or a wood duck box. If we come over to the side, over this side here, we have a door. We usually have a pin in the side to open the door, but we can open the door and we can without scaring the bird, which is a lot better than the top opening and stuff. If this bird gets scared, she can get out, she can exit through up this way and out the box without breaking the eggs, versus a front opening box or top opening box. You don't crowd the birds in with these side opening boxes. So we'll take a walk up a couple more pens here. So in any given pen, the most we have typically is 2 nesting boxes for whatever we set up for breeding in there. In this case, I get a pair of shovelers and a pair of southern poachers in this pen. They're real compatible with each other. They don't fight or anything. I've actually only got 1 nesting box in this pen. It's and again, like I had mentioned with the raised boxes, we vary the size of the holes in the bottom. We make these, again, these are simple construction, one foot by 1 foot square, and we use pressure treated wood just to give it a little bit more life, although that's a lot of times it doesn't make a whole lot of difference. We use wood shavings for the nests. We change them frequently. I've actually come to learn that there's many breeders that don't ever change their nesting material. They'll just add some every year. We tend to change ours quite frequently. If they get a little bit wet, we'll change them. Very seldom would we just add stuff to them. We also have mice and different rodents around here that like to go in and defecate in the boxes, and we don't like to have that in there because obviously the birds can potentially ingest it and potentially get sick, although we haven't had that happen. So when a bird lays a nest in these eggs, in these boxes, she'll clutch up she'll start putting down on it, typically put down on it, and then she'll start setting. And sometimes we'll let them set on eggs, sometimes we'll just collect the eggs. But when we're done with the nest, when the bird completely makes a nest and she puts it down on it, we decide we're going to pull the eggs. We dump the box out completely and we move it to a different location. And the reason we do that is because we don't feel that the birds like to go back into the same box that they've nested in previously. And again, we change these shavings frequently, several times during the season. Now we'll go to another aviary here. Okay, so I had mentioned a few minutes ago that we use barrels for, we like to use barrels for like the nene geese. We use them for some ducks, most often in the wintertime. But again, these things, like I said, they get very, very hot. So what we've done with this particular barrel is we've cut out both sides of it. And again, you can replace this with wooden boxes or something like that, which would be equally as well. But there's a spur-winged goose nest in here. She's got several eggs in here. So we cut both sides out so the bird can actually enter or exit from both sides. But it also gives a good draft coming, in the summertime, you'll get a draft coming through and it'll keep the bird cool in there. And again, we keep the shavings clean in those as well. This is an example of just a regular wooden box, nest box for geese, or I mean, sometimes you could probably have a duck nest in it. and it works really well. This is actually just something left over at the farm when we purchased the farm. Somebody used it for a dog kennel, and we ended up switching it over to just doing a couple modifications on it, and made a little kennel for geese to lay in. And again, we had some Nene geese in this aviary. We pulled them out, and we put some Bahama pintails. You can see there's no vegetation in this aviary, but we'll have vegetation very shortly in here, because once it starts growing, it grows very fast. So as I indicated a minute ago, we very seldom have more than 2 nest boxes per species in any one of these aviaries we have. In this pen we've got East Indian Great Teal, and we've got Argentine Ruddy Ducks. And again, we've got the raised box for the East Indian Great Teal. They'll be laying in the raised box. And these Argentine Ruddies, we provided the ground boxes for them. Like the American Ruddy Ducks, still lay in the ground box. And unfortunately, I don't have any eggs to show you in here, because we've already collected the eggs. She's getting ready to lay another clutch. But this pen tends to get a lot of vegetation in it, to the point where we have a difficult time. Like most of the pens come another couple of weeks, it'll be very difficult to find eggs in because the birds hide the eggs well, which is my second point. Although we provide nesting boxes for everything, when we get into the height of the breeding season and there's more vegetation, very seldom do the birds actually use the nesting boxes because we have so much vegetation. So these ruddy ducks here, which are a ground nester, they'll typically find a little clump underneath some of this grass or something, or some of the weeds, when we got a lot of weeds in here. And eggs are very, very difficult to find. So we'll search. Sometimes we got to just go through the pen really slowly and look all over the ground, because the eggs are like it's worse than an Easter egg hunt. So, but when we do find eggs, we have these little flags that you can buy at Lowe's. They're a sprinkler to tell you where the sprinkler system is, and we'll put them, like if we found a nest here, we put a little flag there. That way, the next time we come in, we can check the nest without having to look all over for it. Because when you're talking somewhere around 70 aviaries, and you're trying to find duck eggs, it gets very difficult. I think that's it.